When we consider before reading, we want to help students activate their prior knowledge. Before reading, independent readers recognise that we need to read for a variety of purposes, such as to find information or for enjoyment. They preview a text before reading, looking over the table of contents, the jacket summary, chapter headings, vocabulary that's in bold or concepts that are highlighted, and important terms that are in margins. Good readers make predictions by looking at clues in the illustrations, the headings, or chapter titles. They recognise genre conventions in the text, so things like the characteristics of a poem, a story, a novel, a newspaper, or a textbook. And then they approach each reading appropriately. It's important to monitor students who may be struggling. To do this, we can look out for students who begin to read without thinking about the topic or without setting a purpose for their reading. They may not preview the text and activate their prior knowledge by looking for key vocabulary or looking at the text structure. So, for example, they won't look for chapter titles or headings or charts or graphs that are contained within the text. Struggling readers may not know how different genres are created and how one approaches reading differently based on the genre they're examining. They may lack interest and motivation to begin reading. Examining the comprehension strategy of activating existing knowledge before reading or pre-reading strategies may include things such as questions and answers. So this is where the teacher has carefully created questions that will be answered by the text. The teacher aide can then use these questions with the students that they are supporting. Answering questions can be done as a think, pair, share activity, or it could be done individually. Explicit vocabulary instruction in relation to Tier 2 and Tier 3 words can help students understand the key vocabulary that is being used in the text. Tier 2 words are those robust academic vocabulary words that students are likely to encounter across all topics and in different learning areas. So an example would be compare or collaborate. Whereas Tier 3 words are highly specialised for a particular learning area. So for example, amino acid would be an example of a Tier 3 word in science. Words and definition matchups allow students to become familiar with the vocabulary of the text. And using a Frayer model is a strategy that uses a graphic organiser for vocabulary building. It can be used with an entire class, in small groups, or for individuals, as it works and draws on students' prior knowledge to build connections among new concepts by creating a visual representation. And we'll look at a Frayer model in more detail soon. List group label activities involve students brainstorming all the words that they can think of that relate to a topic. They then work with groups to cluster the words together into subcategories, and then the students suggest titles or labels to go with each of the categories that they formed. Picture stimulus, including video, will often spark interest in a new topic or a concept, while also providing students with some background knowledge before they read a text. iSearch is a research project that capitalises on students' inquiry skills. Pairs or individuals begin with a broad open-ended question and they source information related to a topic. The students then end up representing what they have learnt in an original text. It's important to note that the list on the screen is not exhaustive. There are many strategies that can be used to activate thinking before reading a text, but remember the strategy must be purposefully selected to support the learning intent of the text, the lesson, the unit, and the learning area. So let's have a look at a Frayer model in more detail. So I've created one on the screen for you, and in a moment, I'm going to ask you to create your own Frayer model. To help students activate their prior knowledge and make connections with the text they are reading, you can utilise a Frayer model. A Frayer model is a graphic organiser that can be used to build student vocabulary. It's used to build understandings of important vocabulary, and there are many variations of a Frayer model. And the one on the screen is just one example of how your Frayer model might look. So I'm going to take you through a Frayer model and then ask you to create one using your handout. When using a Frayer model with students, it's really important to model how to complete the actual diagram, making sure students understand what goes into each section of the graphic organiser. So first of all, we look at the student-friendly definition. And we use a student-friendly definition because it's easier to use, understand, and then apply. Therefore, it is important to help students think about what the word means and how they can express its meaning. Once you have supported students to write their definitions, they can illustrate the concept. What does it look like? In our example, they could draw a definition, they could draw a revolution, allowing them to support their understanding of the definition they've created. However, in this case, that would be pretty challenging. So instead of drawing the concept, students may list all the concepts that are associated with the term and the characteristics. Examples and non-examples further help students to develop an understanding of the terms being studied. In this case, examples of a revolution could include the French Revolution, the American Revolution, and so on. While it seems that non-examples could be pretty much anything, they need to help develop understanding. So therefore, in this example, we might include World War I, the Iraq War, and so on. Both the examples and the non-examples revolve around conflict. However, a revolution has certain underpinning characteristics that separate it from a war. I'll now give you some time to create your own Frayer model using the word activate. I've selected this word because before reading, we activate students' prior knowledge.